The Dallas Cowboys have made two more hirings to their ever-growing coaching staff as Christian Parker and Brian Schottenheimer continue to build something bigger than maybe we have ever seen in Dallas. Welcome in, everybody, to Cowboys Digest. I am Jay Andrews, and I hope you are having a wonderful day wherever you might be. We have got a lot to break down in today's show because the Cowboys have made two defensive hirings over the past couple of days. I want to break them down for you and share some interesting thoughts on this new Cowboys coaching staff. We are seeing an entire shift in how this organization is approaching things under Brian Schottenheimer and Christian Parker. So let us get right into it. Our first hiring comes from Matt Zenitz, who has had a pretty good run of getting coaching news out to us this offseason. Credit to him for staying on top of these developments. He reports that the Cowboys are expected to hire UCF's Dmitri Brim in an assistant defensive line coach capacity. Now, Brim is a former UCF linebacker who posted 81 tackles as a senior back in 2016. He was serving as an assistant defensive line coach at UCF before this hire. Prior to UCF, he had worked at Nebraska and Lehigh, so he has been around the college football coaching world for a while. Now, this is, I believe, the second or third defensive line coach the Cowboys have on staff, two of which are assistants, if I am counting correctly. It is definitely a different way the Cowboys have constructed their defensive staff compared to what we have seen in the past. However, they did lose Aaron White-Cotton, who was the defensive line coach and had an exuberant amount of experience. He was hired away to Tennessee, so I do not mind the Cowboys bringing in some extra defensive line coaches, especially when that position group is going to be a pretty big part of the defense going forward. We know right away that the defensive line is probably going to be the best part of the Cowboys defense, at least based on how the roster is constructed right now. You have got Osa Odigizua, who has been developing nicely. You have Quinnen Williams, who they traded for mid-season last year. And, of course, you have Kenny Clark, who came over in the Micah Parsons trade. That is a really solid interior rotation. Having multiple coaches to develop that group makes a lot of sense. Let me break down Brim's coaching history for you so you can see what kind of experience he brings. He was at Nebraska from 2018 through 2020, working as an inside linebackers coach. He got elevated to a defensive quality control coach at one point during that tenure as well. He worked around the system throughout those 4 years and gained valuable experience at the Power 5 level. Then he transferred over and got hired on the Lehigh staff, where he was the defensive line coach from 2023 to 2024. Following that, in 2025, he moved to UCF as a defensive analyst. That is the same place where he played his college football. So there is obviously a familiarity and connection there. Overall, he has a pretty solid coaching history. You can understand why the Cowboys wanted to bring him in for that assistant defensive line role. I do find it interesting that he had experience coaching inside linebackers back in 2018 at Nebraska. That versatility could be valuable as Christian Parker builds out his defensive scheme. As I mentioned, the defensive line is probably going to be a bright spot right away for the Cowboys with Osa Odigizua, Kenny Clark, and Quinnen Williams. Obviously, Jadeveon Clowney factors in as well. There is going to be a lot to see about how they can get more production out of a player like Izukanma. Re-signing Clowney is probably part of the conversation here too. One thing I noticed that is kind of interesting is the way the Cowboys are listing these players on their depth chart now. They have 3 defensive tackles listed, and then Ezukanma and Clowney are now listed as outside linebackers. That is partially because of how the Cowboys have done their hiring, but I also think it reflects the way Christian Parker is going to run this defense. He seems to prefer that kind of hybrid flexibility. Now let us move to the second hiring, which comes from Todd Archer. He reports that after losing Ramon Chinyang Jr. to the Steelers, the Cowboys are expected to hire Raiders quality control coach Kyle Fuller. Fuller played for 6 teams during his NFL career and has been working as an assistant offensive line and quality control coach. So he is coming in with that dual role for Dallas. Looking at Fuller's background a little more, Shireen Williams of Pro Football Talk noted that he was a seventh-round pick of the Texans back in 2017. He appeared in 51 games with 12 starts across 7 seasons before transitioning into coaching. Interestingly, he and Cowboys head coach Brian Schottenheimer overlapped with each other in the Seattle organization when Fuller was playing there. So there is already a relationship and familiarity between them. Fuller also has a lot of ties to Texas. He went to college at Baylor University in Waco. He was drafted by the Texans in Houston. He was a journeyman throughout his playing career, bouncing around with different teams. Then he worked as an assistant coach at Appalachian State and a couple other smaller programs before landing that quality control job with the Las Vegas Raiders. Now he comes to Dallas to work with Brian Schottenheimer. I like this hire too. I think it is an interesting addition to the staff. But what intrigues me most about combining all of these hirings together is the fact that the Cowboys are growing their staff to what I would call immeasurable amounts. They have assembled a larger staff than I think any of us expected heading into this offseason, especially considering how many coaches they lost. Let me run through the complete hiring list so you can see the full picture of what the Cowboys have done. They brought in Ryan Smith from the Arizona Cardinals to be the cornerbacks coach. Derek Ansley was hired as the passing game coordinator. Marcus Dixon was hired as the defensive line coach. Ojeda Osuswaberbe came in as the outside linebackers coach. Stephen Bravo Brown was named the assistant wide receivers coach. Then you have the 4 most recent hires. Dmitri Brim as the assistant defensive line coach, Kyle Fuller as the assistant offensive line and quality control coach, Scott Simons as the inside linebackers coach, and Robert Mushamp as the assistant secondary coach. So all in all, when it is said and done, the Cowboys have made 9 different hires this offseason. Remember, they lost about 6 or 7 coaches from last year's staff. They have hired 9 replacements. You can see where I am going with this. The Cowboys coaching staff has definitely grown larger and larger. There is no salary cap on coaches, obviously. There is no real limit to how many coaches you can have on staff. If you have the money, go ahead and pay them. Credit to the Cowboys for investing in coaching depth. By my rough count, and again, this is just my best estimate based on what I knew about the 2025 staff and what I am seeing now. The Cowboys had approximately 18 coaches on their staff in 2025. The majority of those were Matt Eberflus guys who came along with him. Most of those coaches who came with Eberflus then left the program as soon as he was fired. That created a lot of openings for Christian Parker and the new staff to fill. Based on my count, not including Schottenheimer himself, I believe the Cowboys now have about 23 coaches on staff heading into the 2026 season. That is a significant increase. We have not yet received confirmation on whether this staff is finalized. There could still be more hires coming. Looking at the breakdown, a majority of the new hires have been on the defensive side of the ball. We know Stephen Bravo Brown and Kyle Fuller were hired on the offensive side, but everyone else has been defensive hires for Christian Parker to construct his staff. It really does feel like the Cowboys are close to being done on the defensive side. I do not know what else they need at this point. Of course, I said that after they hired Scott Simons as the inside linebackers coach, and then they went out and added an assistant defensive line coach. So you never know what else might be coming. The only position that I could see them potentially adding is another secondaries coach. Right now, they have Ryan Smith as the cornerbacks coach, and they hired an assistant secondary coach. But I think most people expect Christian Parker himself to take over that secondary coaching area, since that is his background and expertise. At this point, that is really the only spot I could see the Cowboys going out and making another hire. Otherwise, I genuinely think we are pretty much done with the hiring cycle. And for the Cowboys, this is very good timing. They have gotten to a perfect point in the calendar. The NFL calendar year resets on February 17th, which is Tuesday. that is when a lot of things can start happening in terms of roster management. Then March 11th is the big date for free agency. That is when free agency officially opens and players can start signing with teams. Now, technically, you are not supposed to be able to talk to players before March 11th, but somehow every single year, like 25 players sign on the 11th immediately. You sit there thinking, okay, surely somebody talked to somebody before that date, but that is how it goes. The important thing is the Cowboys have gotten a really good chunk, if not all of their coaching staff, finalized right now. So when the new year resets in 2 days, they can really dive into evaluating their roster. Then on March 11th, they can dive into free agency. And right after that, you go into draft work with the combine and pro days and all of that preparation. I think this approach is smart. Get your coaching staff settled first so you know what kind of scheme you are running. Then you can evaluate your current roster through that lens. Then you can target free agents and draft picks who fit what your coaches want to do. It is a logical progression, and it shows the Cowboys are being thoughtful about how they are building this thing. The defensive line coaching depth in particular makes a lot of sense when you consider the investment the Cowboys have made in that position group. Trading for Quinnen Williams was a major move. Getting Kenny Clark in the Micah Parsons deal was significant. Osa Odigizua has been developing well. Having multiple coaches to work with all of those guys and develop the younger players behind them is smart roster management. I am also curious to see how the outside linebacker situation develops, with Ezekanma and Clowney now listed as outside linebackers instead of defensive ends. It suggests Christian Parker might be moving to more of a 3-4 look, or at least a hybrid scheme that gives him flexibility. Having coaches who understand those concepts and can develop edge players in that system will be important. The youth movement on this coaching staff is also worth noting. A lot of these hires are younger coaches who are hungry to prove themselves. That kind of energy can be contagious in a building. When you combine that with the experience of guys like Schottenheimer, you get a nice balance of fresh ideas and veteran wisdom. Looking ahead, the Cowboys are in a good position. The coaching staff is nearly complete, if not fully finalized. The calendar is about to reset, which opens up roster options. Free agency is less than a month away, and then the draft follows shortly after. All of the pieces are lining up for the Cowboys to have an aggressive offseason if they choose to pursue that path. For what it is worth, I think this staff construction tells us something about how the Cowboys want to play defensively. The emphasis on defensive line coaching suggests they want to win up front with multiple packages and rotations. The flexibility in how they are listing players suggests they want to be multiple in their scheme. And the youth of the staff suggests they are not afraid to try new things. Whether all of this translates to wins remains to be seen. But at minimum, the Cowboys are putting themselves in position to maximize the talent they have and the talent they are going to add. That is all you can ask for heading into an offseason. That is all we have got for you here today on Cowboys Digest. Again, the two hirings are Dmitri Brim as the assistant defensive line coach and Kyle Fuller replacing an offensive line coach and serving in a quality control role as well. Make sure you subscribe if you have not already. Drop a like on this video and let me know in the comments if you think this staff is complete or if there are more hires coming. We appreciate you watching, and we will see you next time. Peace out.